Hey scrapbooking friends, this is Jen. I have a few single page layouts to share with you today, and first up was one that actually took me quite a while. I kept running into problems, so I would solve one issue and create another, so it was a little bit of a struggle, and I think sometimes that happens when we have pictures that are really important to us and a story that's really important to Scrap. So obviously these are pictures of our beloved dog's last Christmas with us, and I didn't really realize that it was her last Christmas with us until I was scrapbooking the pictures, and then it dawned on me. So if you watched my last video, I shared this layout, let's see, which was from the same Christmas, but these are just kind of the general pictures of my boys. And as I was going through, I realized I had a lot of photos that I wanted to use, and I wanted to tell the story about Tabitha, because that was really the story of this Christmas. The other pictures were really just kind of your general Christmas morning photos. There wasn't anything spectacular about them. So it was important to me to get the story down and to do a nice page. So I picked the background paper. It's October afternoon. I really liked the pink because she was a girl, and anytime I get a chance to use pink in my albums, I really try to do that. And I knew I wanted to do kind of a diagonal flow line to really draw your attention to her face in this photo. That, in my mind, was the most important photo here. But if you look, it was also the photo where she's the smallest. You know, it's zoomed out the furthest. She's pretty big here, small there. But this is the one of her happy face. And I didn't want to zoom in and crop out all of the scenery around her, because the point of the story is how involved she used to get in our Christmases. And I really wanted to accentuate that by keeping the whole photo in. But I also had another issue where my son is biting his lip or making a little bit of a strange face, so I really didn't want to draw attention to him. I wanted to draw attention to her in this photo. So I did a few things to get that diagonal flow going. One, I angled these two photos where she's kind of pointing this way in that direction, and then she's forward here. But in order to really solidify that, I started to die cut some snowflakes. Okay, so seemed like a great plan, but once I put it in place, it just looked weird. It looked like these die cuts blended into the patterned paper a little too much, and it looked odd because it was covering some of them. It just looked like the patterned paper was weird. It wasn't standing out the way I intended. So I kept embellishing. You know, sometimes when you're not sure what else to do, you just keep adding. Those snowflakes were stuck down. I couldn't take them off at that point. So I actually decided to pick a smaller snowflake die. This is a Tim Holtz die, and cut 3 identical snowflakes, and I actually put the ones on the ends up on foam dots so it would be raised a little bit off of the paper so it didn't look like it was blending in so much. And then I added a third in the middle here, but I didn't raise that on foam dots because the photo mats were already kind of lifting it up, and I didn't want it to stand out too much. But in order to kind of make that line, I added a little gemstone on each of those 3, so that your eye, the idea is anyway, your eye would travel along that line and land on her face. So I was really happy with how it turned out in the end, because I got a little bit frustrated with that diagonal flow line. And then the other problem I encountered was adding the journaling block. I originally wrote my journaling on a cream colored piece of cardstock, and when I put it down, thank goodness I was lining it up before I was adhering it, excuse me, I realized it stuck out like a sore thumb, and it was this big white block or cream colored block that just drew your attention away from my line, away from her face, and it just wasn't working. And so I really struggled with what to do here. So I finally decided on a piece of vellum, and I used a chocolate brown journaling marker to write my journaling, and then I ran the vellum through the Xyron, which really made it adhere down to the chocolate brown and almost gave it a grayish tone, which is interesting because my son's shirt and my husband's shirt are gray in these photos. So, and our wall is kind of a taupe. So it gave this journaling block kind of the same tone as the photos, so it didn't distract from the line of sight that I wanted to make sure was kept. The last thing I did is made sure that my title, the Tabby's Last Christmas, and this belly band were all kind of horizontal and centered. I didn't want to take away from the diagonal line by, you know, putting one element up in one corner or the other, because then I think you wouldn't really know where to go. So anyway, I was very happy in the end with how this turned out, but it was a little frustrating to go through the process. If you're wondering, this font is actually a Sizzix 35 die set, one of the old ones. It's called In My Heart, and it actually cuts those little hearts out. So I just went in and took kind of a dark pinkish red marker to color those in. And anyway, that's it. So I'll do a couple close-ups and then we'll move on to the next one. Well, you know what? And that's as far as my camera's going. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, here's the next layout. And this was done really just right after Valentine's Day. I actually signed up for a scrapbooking class through paperclipping.com, and the idea is to do this like romantic album, and I don't intend to do that, but I thought it would give me some good starting point ideas for journaling pages about my husband and I so often focus on the kids or the family that I don't focus on us as much as I would like to, and one of the challenges was to scrapbook a date night, and I realized that I really don't take pictures whenever we have a date night. And with the ages of our children and jobs and everything else, date nights are kind of few and far between these days. So we did go out for Valentine's Day, which was right after I watched the one video, and I decided to take pictures. We each actually took a picture of the other with our cell phones. So they're not the best photos, but I thought it was cute. So this page, I was happy with how the design turned out. I wish I used a different color for this pink. I think the pink is a little bit too much of a baby bright pink, and I would have done better using a more muted tone. And I even thought about redoing it, but then I decided to call it whimsical, since Valentine's Day is kind of a whimsical holiday anyway, and just call it good and move on. So couple of just design points here. I made the heart mat a little bit off-center just to make the page a little more interesting. I find if you center everything, sometimes it's a little boring. So I liked the idea of pushing that heart off to the side, and it also was able to show off a little more of this pattern paper, which I just love. I've had that in my stash forever. I think it's a KI Memories pattern, but I'm not quite sure. Anyway, I really wanted to use it, and I thought this was a perfect opportunity. And I loved that kind of bohemian paisley look. So I think my turquoise and pink here are a little bit too bright, but again, I'm calling it whimsical and moving on. A couple of points. If you notice, I tried to make a visual triangle, really relying off of this big heart in the middle, adding some heart punches here and then a heart punch here to kind of allow your eye to focus on the main subjects. And incidentally, these are cell phone pictures, so they aren't very good quality, but I printed them out on my new Canon selfie printer, which I absolutely love and highly recommend, because the pictures actually turned out nicer when I printed them than they looked on the phone. You know, usually you have a phone picture that looks okay, and then you get it printed and it's kind of dark and grainy. These actually printed up nicer than they appeared on the phone, so I was happy with that purchase. The font here that I cut Valentine with is a Quick Cuts font. It's an old one called Spicy Chicken. I love my die cut alphabets. I do get a lot of use out of them. And I love just being able to cut my title in any color that I want or any font style that I want. I don't have to go rooting through my letter stickers to find a style that works and a color that works, and then I don't have anything else on that page with the exact same match. So in any case, that's just a little aside. So I called this one done and moved on. So let's take a look at the last page. Okay, so this is the last page I have to share today, and actually I think it's my favorite of the three as far as color and design goes. This one came together pretty quickly, actually. I knew that I wanted to have some kind of background paper with red in it because my son has some red stripes in his hat. But I didn't want to put too much color in. I still wanted it to feel very wintry. So I found this paper in my stash. I think it's by My Mind's Eye. But I'm not quite sure. The line was called I Believe. But in any case, it has these little red dots that are kind of a berry, I suppose. And it doesn't look like it's picking up on the camera, but the dots actually are glittered. So they kind of shimmer a little bit. And then I went looking for cardstock to kind of pull out that red to use as an accent on the page for my die cuts. And when I held up like a dark cranberry red, which is a true match to those dots, it really seemed too heavy and too dark for the page, and it was distracting from my snow theme. So I opted to go for more of a raspberry red tone, which I think works because of the shimmer on the dots, and it is a similar tone, so it looked good together for me. The background then to my title, and this was just cut with my Cricut cartridge, and I think it's one of the new ones of when I was a kid, but I liked this particular title because the shadow wasn't too thick. I didn't want to do a big heavy shadow behind the title and have so much of that red showing, but I didn't want my title to feel like it was floating in outer space there. So I cut a doily with a Sizzix die that I had just to allow my title to have somewhere to sit. And then in order to make sure that this whole spot wasn't really just kind of floating out there, I made sure my journal lines extended wider than this element so that it almost could sit on those like a shelf. So it almost holds it in place even though they're not technically touching. And so to avoid the same problem with my photo over here feeling like it was going to be floating out there, I decided to ground it with a little piece of the same border strip that holds the bottom two photos up. And I didn't want to go the whole way down. I just wanted to add a little bit more of that red color so that I had some balance to the page, because I've got a big element of red here, a big element of red with the border down below, and the little hat wasn't enough to keep that balance going in the page. So adding this red strip I think helped. And then I wanted to create a visual triangle and add a snowflake, but putting a white snowflake on was really just too much. It was too much white. And I struggled with whether I could bring in like a bluish color or what would work, and I ended up using a silver glitter paper. It's actually the American Crafts Pal paper, so it die cuts very nice, and there was a snowflake element on the same Cricut cartridge page. So I just cut 3 of those, and then I used a circle punch for underneath the 2 corner snowflakes just to add a little bit more to those elements so that your eye is drawn to all 3 and then therefore throughout the page. One thing to notice, this border die here is actually, I think I have it, a Sizzix Hello Kitty border die. It's called Tulip Garden. Let me see if I can show you. It's got 2 pieces to it. So one cuts the wonky border and the other cuts this like little tulip shape that layers on top of it. I've never used that tulip shape, but I use this wonky border quite often because I think it provides a really cool scallop effect without being an even scallop. Anyway, the problem with it is it's not quite 12 inches across, so I actually had to patch it, cut it and patch it here, and that's why I put the element over that seam, so no one is going to know except you and me. So anyway, I was really happy with how this page turned out overall, and incidentally, these are now 3 Huskies. They're 2 right now. We got them shortly after Tabitha passed away. They're all the same color. They're kind of this chocolate brown red color. And my son was wearing black, so I really didn't want to pull one or the other of those colors in. It was too harsh, and I didn't want to add in another color. I really like the idea of just having that bluish green, the pinkish red, white, and a little bit of accent of silver. So I think what I like most about this page is the color choice. Anyway, that's all I have to share with you guys today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!